How hard did you push it? Till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
What's happening, Municipals? This is Ashton. Really sad. Braves just got eliminated by the Phillies. But I don't want to talk about that. Not at all. I don't want to think about it. That is not what we are here to talk about. I am here with a frequent guest, Mr. JD Lindert. JD, how's it going?
Good, man. Was kind of hoping we were going to talk about the Braves, but I guess that's out the window. Thanks for having me, though.
I don't think I'm going to talk about the Braves. Not right now. Ronald Acuna is the GOAT. Regular season and postseason baseball are different. It's all good. It's all good. But we're here to talk two things. We're here to talk Ryder Cup. You went. You were there. You had quite the Italian vacation. And then on the back half, we're going to warn people. I think some people are going to ask for this. I don't think it's low cap privilege, but I think we had a lot of comments about this being longer driver maybe privilege. But we're going to talk about sort of our joke is hashtag play it back. There's been a lot of play it up and, play it shorter. And we talk about on the next podcast that'll actually come out in the new year. It'll be about our Seattle trip. And we played it from like 7,500 yards. And that trip was enlightening to me. We'll kind of talk about the hashtag play it back and because JD really kind of helped me think through it. I think it could actually be beneficial to some people. But I'm not going to talk a lot about this. I just want to hear, I don't really know what questions to ask. Like, how was Italy? How was the Ryder Cup? Like, going to give me a sense of like, you were there for 3 weeks?
16 days is how long we were gone for. Too long. I was actually talking to a coworker today, and in my full-time working career, so call it 15 years or so, I think the longest vacation I've taken is maybe a Thursday, Friday, Monday type of a deal.
Really?
So 16 days for me was part fun, part torture. We went to a lot of places. 16 days, we were in 6 hotels. So it's a lot of bouncing around, a lot of packing and repacking. That part's not fun. Seeing a different country, seeing a different culture, especially one with the historical significance of Italy and the different geographies, the different topographies. We went from the north down to the south, so seeing Lake Como and Venice and Rome, which I call New York City with more history, and then the Amalfi Coast was phenomenal. So really good time. Fortunate enough that it was my third Ryder Cup that I've attended. I went to the '04 Ryder Cup at Oakland Hills. I would have been 16 years old. It was really fun to have the European fans there, and my first kind of interaction and experience with what I'll call creative fans relative to kind of the meathead American fan that sits around and beats people up at football games. 2021 at Whistling Straits was a great time. Fewer European fans due to travel restrictions still being in place from Europe due to COVID. So I was really looking forward to the first experience being on foreign soil, being the fan of the visiting team, if you will. And it was a great experience. I think the atmosphere and the European fans lived up to everything that I would have hoped that they would have been from a creativity and playfulness standpoint. I think something that all sports fans should aspire to be and realize the fact that it's at the heart of hearts what you're watching is really entertainment. And not a lot of people go to a movie to boo, but a lot of people go to a sporting event to boo. So it's kind of fun to, and trust me, I am a sports fan through and through. I'm not saying it's not important to people or make you feel emotional in some way, shape, or form, but just the creativity and the way that those fans interact with a game is really, really fun to see.
Yeah. it's definitely something that's kind of palpable through like just watching on TV, and I can't imagine what it was like to be there and see it live, especially coming off. I mean, you especially just the last couple of years seen the full spectrum, right? I mean, you had the 19-9 beatdown, and then you had what everyone thought was going to be the year to do it, and then it turns out I was in London, so I was kind of on the right time, but I slept in because of just jet lag, and I woke up to 4-0 Europe, and it's like, oh, well, you know what? Like, maybe this isn't going to be the year. I don't know. But I guess to place it, though, JD, I know it said it was Rome, but, like, where is Marco Simone relative to Rome? Like, how did you get there?
It was actually interesting. So there wasn't any really parking on site, so it was all shuttles, very limited taxi service, and taxis were all €75 from anywhere in Rome to or from Marco Simone, so not the most cost efficient way to get to and from on a daily basis.
Where were the shuttles coming from?
So they had different spots from a public transportation standpoint, so you could train and ride, which was more of their call it commuter train. They had a metro and ride, which is more of their subway system, and then they had a bus and ride. Our shuttle came right from the hotel, which was pretty convenient. So I honestly don't know what the shuttle schedule was. We were on the first shuttle every morning, just to be able to get out there and get to property as soon as possible, and try to gain as early access as possible to get towards the first tee. And one of the hard parts with the Ryder Cup in general is outside of Sunday, because Sunday you actually have 12 groups on the grounds once everybody's out and running. It's one of the coolest experiences that I've had around sports, but it's one of the worst golf tournaments to watch golf. If you think about it, and for anybody that has gone to try to follow around Tiger Woods at any point in time, but especially like pre-2010 when he was kind of the only draw, right, for some of these golf tournaments, you would essentially try to watch Tiger tee off. You would go to like the 5th or 6th hole and you'd wait for him to come through. You'd go to like the 12th or 13th hole, you'd wait for him to come through, and then you'd go to 18. You'd see him like 4 times, right? And that's kind of how the Ryder Cup is, because if you think about it, you've got 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people on property, but you only have 4 groups out there at any given time. So every group is like trying to watch Tiger, and they're all in the same part of the golf course at the same point in time. So it's even worse than trying to follow Tiger, because you're either going 6 holes ahead and seeing nothing for an hour and a half, until you watch 4 groups come through, and then you do the same thing, and you can only do that 2 or 3 times. So really one of the coolest experiences is trying to get to that first tee and the whole build up to the first group, watching the groups go off. You get to see all 4, and then you can kind of pick and choose your spots as to where you want to go. I think we've done this. I think we may have done this with the Masters, but my wife and I really like to, any golf tournament we go to, one of the things that we really like to see is actually the golf course, more so than just the golf being played. So we spent a lot of time, especially Saturday. Friday we watched the first tee shots for the opening session, and then we actually went and did a Vatican tour. But Saturday we were on grounds the entire time. So we took that time to walk the golf course backwards, which is kind of what we typically do. So we were kind of walking around that back 9 when no one was out there, and then by the time we got to the front 9, you kind of fought through the crowds and traversed the front 9 with nobody out there and got to really take in the golf course. But that's definitely one of the interesting dynamics of the Ryder Cup. And I'll give you an example as to what I mean and then shut up for a minute. But the 04 Ryder Cup at Oakland Hills, I want to say it was like the 11th and 12th hole, something like that. One hole was a long par 4 or par 5, and there was a grandstand at the backside of the green. The next hole is a par 3, so there's a grandstand behind the tee box, and then a grandstand. The par 3 came back the other direction, adjacent to the hole that was coming up. So the other grandstand behind the green was almost kind of down the fairway of the preceding hole. And I was standing in the middle of all of that, so somewhere up by the par 4, par 5 green, let's say. and this USA chant broke out, where one grandstand was the U, one grandstand was the S, and the other grandstand was the A, and you're standing in the middle of all of this. And for anyone that's been to a large sporting event, you just get the hit from one side with U, and then S, and then A behind you, and like it literally, for a 16-year-old kid, like brought chills. So that's the experience part of it that's really fun. But it is very difficult to watch golf shots outside of Sunday, which becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this obviously, but I was at the 2019 Masters, and I had been in 2013 as well when Adam Scott won, and I made the mistake that year because Adam Scott is my favorite non-Tiger golfer, and and obviously he was in the last group or second to last group, and I made the mistake that year of like trying to follow him, and like you could see some things, but not really. And so when I went in 2019 for Tiger, my friend who has been going for a long time because it's her family's tickets, we just took off to 16. And obviously we got super lucky because that's when they were doing, I think they did split tees that day, super early tee times, because they were positive the weather was going to be awful. So it's a little bit better than your situation because obviously like we had, it wasn't split tees. I don't think so. Not on Sunday, but we had to wait a little bit, but then pretty shortly thereafter we were on 16. Maybe it was split tees. I'm sorry. I don't remember. That's not a relevant part to this, but we sat at 16 all day. And I think that was the way to do it. But again, you have the whole group coming through, the whole tournament coming through, where in your case you have 4 shots. And I've even heard from other podcasts with the knowing up guys and stuff, they're like, the thing to do is go pick a spot and then you essentially watch TV with a bunch of people until the guys come through, which sounds super cool in some ways and partly like, wow, I flew to Italy to watch a gigantic big screen of guys who are over there, but I can't get to them. Like, that's got to be both exciting and a bit of a letdown, I kind of imagine. You had the experience, but it's got to feel a little bit like, damn it.
It's tough, and I knew going in what it was going to be, so it wasn't a shock. And I still think everybody should go. I had somebody ask me, I think when we were over there at one of the hotels that we were at, basically say, if you could go to the Masters or the Ryder Cup, which one should you go to? And it's kind of a tough question to answer because I love the Masters. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, golf tournament. And going to Augusta is just a different experience, but I think it kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you really want to watch golf shots, you go to the Masters. You just may watch golf shots of not your favorite golfer, right? Because that can be tough unless your favorite golfer is not, Tiger or leading the golf tournament in some way. But the experience of going to the Ryder Cup is really, really tough to match. I've not been to the Olympics, but I would imagine it would be similar, or World Cup as an example with soccer. I just think that would be those types of events that are athletes that are participating for a flag versus a team brings out a different atmosphere and a different feeling altogether than, say, athletes playing for themselves, if you will.
Yeah. As long as they get paid, right?
Yeah.
That's amore.
There was some, everyone kind of knows about that, but there's some interesting stuff that kind of goes into all of this, and we've been fortunate enough to attend some of these things, mainly because my dad's association with the PGA of America, and I don't know if I'm not sure that I knew of this, so I'm not sure it's common knowledge, but there are essentially 2 groups of what I'll call super fans. Okay. On the American side, they're called like the Marshals, I think. And on the European side, so like the Marshals of the Cup or something along those lines. And then on the European side, they call themselves the Guardians of the Cup. So the Marshals are the guys that you see wearing the USA hockey jerseys with like the Viking helmets on. And the Guardians are in blue and yellow waistcoats with kind of the Payne Stewart style hat and +4s or knickers on, right? they essentially are the ones that start a lot of the chants, songs, however you want to look at it. The Guardians in 2021 had a hard time getting into the country. My dad actually helped facilitate that. And it was a really funny experience. We were out to dinner on Friday night, maybe, or Saturday night. And we're just wrapping up the dinner. My dad's not there, so it was just myself, my wife, my sister, her husband, a buddy, his friend, and then another couple. So we had 8 of us. And all of a sudden, table right next to us, the Guardians sit down. And this was the night where the whole hats off to your bank account, Joe LaCava, Patrick Cantlay makes the big putt, etc. So they sit down and we immediately just start chatting it up with them. And one of the really, I didn't know really what to expect. I met them in 2021. Same group of guys. They're a bunch of college buddies. They remembered us in some way, shape, or form, or they said they remembered us. That could have just been here.
Oh
Yeah, I totally remember you.
What's up, man? Good to see you, man.
It wasn't immediate, obviously, but one of the guys was like, he like lit up, and he was like, it was so cool that Cantlay made that putt. And that, like, it almost like knocked me off guard. Because think about that, right? We opened up this with you. Obviously, tonight wasn't a great night for your fandom, right? But you wouldn't say, like, man, I really love seeing Bryce Harper hit that home run. Right? Like, that's so different than how we think about sports, and I'll just use Americans as a kind of a blanket statement. And then he went on, he's like, he put up with so much shit from our fans all day long with the whole hats off thing, and he took it on the chin, and he was smiling walking down 16, and for him to make that putt, and obviously I think everybody wanted to see a more competitive tournament or match than what the Americans had given up to that point, so that full point was big for what Sunday kind of ended up being, which was a little bit more drama. And I think they were genuinely happy that it was going to be somewhat more competitive than just a thrashing. But it was kind of cool, right? It was really cool to see this group of people that spends all this time, all for 2 years, coming up with these chants and songs and ways to cheer on their team or to hype up a crowd or whatever that may be. They spend all the money to go put themselves up in hotels and get the tickets and the time to get into the stadium or the stands early, even though they are kind of helped to get the preferential seating that they absolutely deserve and should. To see them be so happy that a U.S. player performed well and won a match was kind of the essence of the reason why the Ryder Cup is so cool.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they are creative as hell, man. I'm sure everybody saw we were caught up in it on Saturday morning, the whole, we're the left side of the tee, and then the, middle and right side, and it goes around and around. They did a wave that started in the middle of the tee box and went both directions and actually ended up going all the way down the entire first hole to the grandstands behind the green.
I'm pretty anti-wave, but that sounds cool.
I'm anti-wave too, but that was like, if you're going to do it, why not do it 500 yards long type of a deal? Yeah. They had songs for every player on the European squad. I know everybody saw the hats off to your bank account, but one that I don't know if it got around on Sunday, they had a song going of "It's all about the money, money." Patrick Cantlay. It's stuff like that like I'm not creative enough to come up with that. I'm not sure many diehard sports fans are the really creative side, but they're good, man. They're fun to be around. They rib you in a way where it's like, ow, that kind of hurt, but can I be your friend, please? Type of a feeling. So I had an absolute blast being surrounded by the European fans. Italy put on a show. opening ceremonies with the flyover from the Italian Air Force or Navy or whatever it was, twice actually, one from right to left and one from back to front. The whole thing was done well.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, like I said, you could see it at the TV, but also when you were sharing like videos in the group chat, it was like, oh yeah, like this kind of captures it. But that's where I imagine being there. It's just suddenly you're like, yeah, I'm not gonna see a bunch of golf shots, but who cares? Like the environment is so great. I'm curious. You mentioned walking the course back to front. Heard a lot of golf course takes in preparation for this thing. What was your take on the golf course? And I guess specifically, what was your take on the golf course through the lens of match play? Because I imagine that probably can and should have a pretty big impact on your feelings.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think the golf course is aesthetically interesting. It's very pretty. It's very picturesque. It has a lot of rolling hills. It has a lot of elevation or undulation to it. The playing surfaces themselves looked to be impeccable, so fairways and greens. The rough and any adjacent areas was really bad. And I don't mean the whole ball drop thing that you see where it's like, look how gnarly the rough is. I just mean like it's a fescue crabgrass, and areas that were far enough away from a hole to not be on TV looked like something that you would find on your local muni. Like just ponds that didn't have pumps or weren't well kept, like just not something that you would think would hold a major golf tournament. So from an aesthetic standpoint, there was this huge juxtaposition between what you saw probably on TV and the majority of where shots were played from versus where maybe some of our shots would have been played from, was a little bit different. As far as the golf course itself and how it would play based on kind of seeing it and walking it, my understanding is the guys who play it for the Italian Open don't love it from a stroke play perspective, and you can definitely see why. It was a hell of a match play golf course, and I think for the same reason. Everybody saw Hovland's hole-in-one on the fifth hole, on par 4. I believe it was with a 3-wood. Most guys were hitting 3-wood there. They played the same tee every day, and the tee was, I would say, at least 3 tees up. I'm not saying that the hole is harder from all the way back. I actually think the hole's just worse from all the way back, where if you think of how the water kind of comes into play there, if you played it from, call it 100 yards longer, right? I'm assuming that it was probably playing somewhere around 350, no, probably 280 to 320, somewhere in there, right? If they're hitting 3-woods. If you played it from 350, 360, 380, 400, somewhere in that ballpark, it kind of just becomes this really boring iron and a wedge, right? So from a stroke play perspective, maybe they play that forward, but probably not with 2 more drivable par 4s to come, right? So 11 is truly a drivable par 4 from all the way back, and then 16, so the hole where Fleetwood clinched it, hitting that driver or 2-wood or whatever he hit. They also played that a couple of tee boxes forward, and that's another one that if you play it all the way back, the water doesn't come into play for a good player because you've got a lob wedge in your hand or a short wedge in your hand for the second shot after hitting what really equates to kind of a mid-long iron off the tee. So I kind of look at it and say there's like the first couple of holes are really good holes regardless of how you're playing it, but the course in its totality is just better for match play because it has areas that can create extremely high drama. I think my favorite stretch of holes was essentially 13 on, because you had such, or you could almost just say the back nine, you just had such highs and lows. It's almost the thing that everybody loves about the back nine at Augusta, right? You've got doubles and you've got eagles. 13, everybody was making birdies. 14 was hard as hell. 15 was hard as hell. 16, everybody was driving the green. 17 was you had a good look at birdie, or you were hitting that pitch shot that Rory had down left of the green where everything funneled. And then 18, you kind of saw a little bit of everything. If you hit 2 really good shots, you could make a 3. You could definitely make a 4. But you could get yourself out of position pretty quickly. So I just thought that was kind of this, oh my God, we're riding a high, going drivable par 4 on 11, reachable par 5 on 12, short birdie hole on 13, 14, 15 kind of kick you in the teeth. 13 brings you back to something easy. 16 brings you back to something easy. 17, you've got that left side that everybody was kind of funneling it down to. And then 18 as a finishing hole created enough drama to make it really fun. But I just think that works better in match play because of how the shorter par 4 is set up.
Okay, so that's the course. So it sounded like pretty dramatic amphitheater. And I mean, again, I think you definitely felt that. I mean, I think that the first moment for me of like, because I wasn't able to watch, even though I was on the right time zone, I wasn't really able to watch much of it. But I really kind of felt that when it's like Wyndham Clark and Homa, Wyndham pounds that drive past the bunker, look at his chops, and then I don't know if he shanked it, but that ball was like 50 yards up in the people. And you could be like, that feels like a miss that's generated by the situation, the core. Like, I don't know, like I was just sitting at a bar in London and I could like feel it. And it feels like the course really set itself up for that. So I'm curious, obviously you did not get to watch, as we talked about, there's a limited amount of golf that you can see, but are there any specific matches that you got to watch more of than others? Are there specific shots that stand out to you, like things that you remember live beyond the cheers and stuff?
So we kind of spent a lot of time in 2 spots, 3 spots if you count the first tee. First tee, left of 13 green, and then 16, 17. The reasons for that, first tee is somewhat self-explanatory. Left of 13 green, you can see 13, which was a short par 3, about 150 yards. You could see the tee shot on 14, and you could see the approach and the putt on 15. So you could see a lot of golf kind of in that one area if you hung around there. Following matches is, I'm not a big crowds person in general. I just think it's a fool's errand. And I'm a tall guy. Like, it is hard to impossible to watch, and my wife's not a tall guy, so it's even harder for her. So yeah, a lot of holes out there. What was it, Morikawa and Burns? Was that the duo that won on Saturday when they had the big lead and kind of started to squander it away a little bit? Watching Morikawa flag it in there on 13 and miss that putt. Fleetwood made a great birdie putt from kind of a tricky knob in the green, downhill, kind of left to right putt. Burns almost made his putt on 13. The match should have been over right there, could have been over right there. 14, Morikawa stuffs it in there, misses again, and then they come up 15, and we hustled out of there to get to 16. I think 16 is one of the most fun holes that I've seen in that setup, in a match play setup, in a Ryder Cup setup. One of the hospitality accesses that we had was like call it like third story of the hospitality that ran along the left side of 16 and then the left side of 17. So it had this outdoor balcony where you could essentially watch the tee shot and the putts on 16. You could watch the tee shot and the putts on 17. So we watched a lot of golf come up 16 and 17. It obviously had a lot of drama, even with how bad some of the matches were. Most of them made it to 16, outside of the 1,000,000,007 or whatever Scheffler and Koepka lost. Most of the matches made it to call it that 16th tee at very least, and a lot of them made it to 17. I don't know why I'm saying that in such a shocking tone. They're professional golfers. It probably should make it to 17 in most matches, but those were the areas that we frankly saw the most of. We didn't really follow any particular matches. It's not really our MO. So that yeah, sorry if that's not the answer you're looking for, but that's that was our experience.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I think most of my pre-coverage was, Solly from No Laying Up, like, the Ryder Cup's his favorite thing, and they posted a video of them playing out there, and he was so out on the golf course, and obviously it sounds like they cut the rough the week of, and then they were talking about how they were like 16 at the Ryder Cup, like this year might have been like the coolest like single hole experience that might ever exist. And I think it was cool because I think I did not realize this until after the fact, but Marco Simone was built with the Ryder Cup in mind. And to your point, I think before you press record, we're talking about those 3 drivable holes, which like kind of stink with the back tee because they're not drivable. But like it's kind of cool. Like I think you said, like they're not going to build a PGA Tour course with 3 drivable par 4s, but for match play for Ryder Cup, it's perfect. And yeah, I mean, just like on Instagram, like seeing the pictures of that setting, like true amphitheater, everyone's jacked up. You can taste the tension. If you don't have Zach telling guys to hit 3-wood in the water, maybe it's a little more interesting. But
I'm gonna probably be in the minority here. That's not abnormal for me, but it was the right call. I think for the mistakes that Zach made, and there were a lot of them, one of my least favorite thing was, I mean, listen, the United States team was dealing with something that the team doctor couldn't figure out from a bug perspective. It started with Ricky Fowler, from my understanding. Started on like Tuesday or Wednesday night. It hit numerous guys on the team. They were all staying on the same floor at the same hotel, along with some other individuals. So it was essentially they were on the 6th floor. The European team was on the 7th floor. Saying that Friday night after getting walloped isn't the right time to say it. You either say it going in, saying, hey, I have some concerns, or I hope my guys can make it through, or whatever that may be, or you don't say it at all.
You probably don't send Ricky off first.
You could argue that either direction. You gotta send him out at some point. Do you send him out first and let him rest? I don't know.
You could just wait on Sunday. I mean, nobody ever does that anymore, but you can just play him on Sunday.
You could.
I know nobody does that anymore.
I just think you end up putting a lot of stress on the rest of the team from a physical perspective. I want to say Max was the only guy to play all 5? Yeah.
Yep. And then I think Rory might have. I don't know from the European side, but I was going to say Rahm, but as much as I love Rahm, I don't see Rahm trudging around. A little too dad body for 5 times run Marco Simone.
Yeah, the 3-wood on 16, especially given where the match was in Jordan's typical ball flight, it was the right call. The reason I say that is with where the pin was, which was kind of back right, he needed to have a look at 2, and he definitely needed to make 3. With where guys were hitting their drivers, so it was kind of playing slightly into a hurting wind that day. It was more cross off the left, but slightly hurting. Jordan tends to hit the ball pretty low for a PGA Tour player, at least on a relative basis. So his ball's going to cut through that wind a little bit more than others, and every guy to a tee was hitting, outside of maybe Brian Harmon, was hitting it long left. So away from the water, but past the pin. And this is what made 16 really, really good. There was a knob in the back of the green. So when Fleetwood hits that shot in there and it kind of rides up the slope and starts to trickle down, if you got on the wrong side of that and threw it back into the rough, there was no way in hell you were getting close to that flagstick. You weren't making 2, and you may not be making 3. It was a hard golf shot. Now, you could have hit it on line with the flag and long and potentially chipped it in, but your best look at 2 was short left of the hole. And the only way to get it short left of the hole was to hit 3-wood. Jordan just put a bad swing on it. And that could have been confidence. It could have been, hey, I didn't believe in it, but I probably agree with Zach that it was, given the circumstance and all of the other factors, 3-wood's probably the right play there.
Yeah, Zach Johnson's just my least favorite player of all time. So, I didn't like him as a golfer and I don't know. I just think it's so hard because, yes, a captain, there's a big role in them, obviously the strategic component, but just such an I don't know, just like those press conferences. You don't win a press conference, and our Stricker's press conference wasn't great in the U.S. Put a historic beatdown, but Zach is just so, he just can't get out of his own way. But hey, I mean, you're from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, as he likes to tell us. You never know. I mean, poor guy's an Iowa football fan. He elects to watch that slop. So I don't know. No, but that's good intel. I mean, because again, everything I'm hearing is secondhand, and a lot of the kind of people who I listen to, it's kind of groupthink, and it's I don't know. I mean, it's tough when when he hits it in the water, it's tough not to be maybe just don't do that. But it's good to know that's kind of what you felt.
I mean, he might have wanted to try a little bit of that same energy on the first tee, because holy shit, did we get our brains beat in on that first hole over and over again. Just one day pumping drivers right, the next day pumping drivers left. And if you go play that golf course with as far as those guys hit it, the bunker down the right was 290. You just hit 3-wood, and you just hit it. It was kind of a funky angle. I don't know if you could really tell on TV, but to hit the fairway, you had to take it right down the left side of the dogleg. So it kind of goes out and it doglegs late, and you can't cover. No one could cover the dogleg up the left-hand side, and that was the really nasty rough you saw a lot of people in.
Yeah.
So a lot of those guys are taking it up the left-hand side and kind of working it off towards those bunkers. And day 1, everybody pumped it right. Day 2, everybody pumped it left. But in the singles, you saw more guys hitting 3-woods and just essentially aiming it at the bunker through the fairway, and you had the entire fairway to work with. It was a much bigger margin for error. I think in 4-ball, maybe you considered kind of having one guy get it out there and play and one guy trying to take it on a little bit more just to give yourself a better look at birdie. But I would have liked to have seen more guys hit 3-wood off the first tee than continually just hit driver into bad spots, because we got absolutely annihilated on the first hole.
Yeah. I mean, it even just felt like, it's easy after the fact, but when I saw Hovland of all people chip in on one, I was like, it doesn't feel good.
That was right after Scheffler lipped out, too. The group before Scheffler lipped out, and then Hovland chips in, and you're like, wait, one of these guys actually usually chips in? Not usually, but chips in a lot. And one of these guys has historically been known as, I know it's changed a lot this year, but has historically been known as, the worst freaking chipper on tour. Katie, my wife, was making some comments about Lavinia is the lady's name that is the owner of the golf course. Technically the owner's daughter or granddaughter, but the owner passed away, so it's technically hers now. She lives on a castle on the golf course. It's this kind of crazy story, but wow. She was saying that Lavinia buried magnets and trampolines because the European squad kept getting bounces and they kept making 40-foot putts, and we could not find the bottom of the cup from 10 feet away. So they definitely hold more putts, they hold more chips, and if you kind of look at Ryder Cups of past, it's where it's won.
Yeah. It is crazy how an event like that, there's not that many. They're the best in the world, but there's not that many golfers out there. It's crazy how many times those guys chip in, like the theatrics, right? It's the chip ins. It feels like at maybe all Ryder Cups, but just with recency bias. At this Ryder Cup, there was a higher proportion of high drama, chip ins and that kind of stuff. I feel like it was happening everywhere all the time, which again must have been just thrilling to hear the roars from around the places that happened.
I'd like to see if that's a trend when played on European soil because, and I have a theory on it that I guess
You said magnets.
yeah, no, that's Katie's theory. I don't know if the theory holds true from a statistics standpoint, but typically home team gets to set up the golf course, right? Europeans want to play a Ryder Cup on a slower golf course for no other reason than it just pisses the Americans off. So they're more used to it, they're more accustomed to it, and we're a bunch of divas that have to play on, firm, fast greens, essentially. And I'm just wondering if the slightly slower green speed, slightly softer greens, with as good as those guys are around the green, it just takes your margin of error and expands it a little bit. And I wonder if that has anything to do with the number of shots that were holed from off the putting surface.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Don't know.
But it is so funny how it pisses the Americans off because one thing that's interesting about the Ryder Cup more and more every year is like they're all just PGA Tour players, right? Except for the people that aren't like Big Shot Bob. Like he'd play on the PGA Tour if he could, right? He hasn't got there yet. So I don't know. But man, it's fun to watch, and I guess on to Bethpage. I guess last question for you: who would you like to see as the next captain, and then who would you like to see as the next captain when we go to Adair Manor?
In order would be Freddie Couples and then Tiger Woods.
So Freddie at Bethpage and Tiger at Adair.
For the record, I don't think that's going to be what happens, but that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, it would be pretty awesome to have Tiger be the one who does it. But
I think
don't know.
that is why I would say that, right? I mean, Tiger's going to get a captaincy. That's not breaking news. He'll get it whenever he wants it. Realistically, also not breaking news. I don't know if he'll take either. Just because I don't know if Adair is going to be big enough, if that makes sense. But I don't know if he'll pass up the opportunity to do something that hasn't been done at that point in 34 years. And I think given the choice, given the choice between the two of them, he will lean more towards Adair than Bethpage.
Yeah, he wants to set. Yeah, because if the U.S. loses it at Bethpage, like the Earth is crumbling in on itself.
I'm not going to write that off as being a possibility, just because I still think, even after whistling, I still think there's some. I'm not going to say dysfunction because I don't buy into the whole team room bullshit that you kind of hear from call it the groupthink that you said earlier, right? It's one person whispers it and it becomes screams by the time it's 10 people down the line. Yeah. I do think that it still means more to the European team, right? You look at the way, and it's not just Rory, right? Like Rory's kind of the face and gets the microphone shoved in his face a lot, so he ends up being the sound clip, but Justin Rose has said as much, and took the little dig at presumably kind of the Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, and Scheffler and Burns pairings, where it's a good pairing on the European team isn't playing with your best mate. It's playing for something bigger than yourself, or whatever the quote was. And I just think until that changes, right? Until guys are willing to not take 5 weeks off before. Nobody would do that before the Masters or the U.S. Open or the Open Championship or the PGA. And I get that it's at the end of the year and et cetera. Until that changes, I'm not confident that we can string wins together even on home soil.
That makes sense. It just needs to be more of a priority across the board. Yeah. And not that this has anything to do with it, but I think it's also a bit tough because, again, a lot of the European guys are PGA Tour players, but I think it's also just hard as, two guys who play in the cookout every year and love match play. It's like, it's just like the PGA Tour essentially like completely devaluing match play in general, right? Where it's like, was the Dell the best tournament? Like, no, but like the fact that I know it'll change apparently, but the fact that there's no match play on the 2024 schedule is just a fucking joke. I mean, I don't know. It's not hard. I mean, we've talked about this before. Make the Tour Championship the best, the top 8 guys in the fucking FedEx Cup and have them play round robin match play for 20 million. Like, would watch the shit out of that. Like, let's
Yeah,
go.
I think you can expand it even beyond the top 8, to be honest. I've heard that. I've heard you guys say that a few times. I think you can go 16.
Sure.
I don't think it needs to be round robin. I think that in the what
I
they're
said round robin. I don't even know what that means. Does round robin mean you play everybody?
yeah.
Oh no,
What
then never mind. That
yeah,
was
you're
me
just
like
thinking
grabbing a catchphrase.
single elimination.
Yeah.
You go Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final 4. It's 4 matches. You can do that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just as you would a normal event
Yeah.
without trying to shove 36
And
holes in
apologies to
somewhere.
Eastlake. Eastlake is probably way better after it gets redone by Andrew Green. But like, go somewhere cool. To your point, go to places like fucking do it at Cyprus, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, they're not shooting a score. There's not that like they massacred the golf course. Like, nobody knows what these guys shot, right? It was all about like, what do I hit into 16, right?
Yeah.
Driver, 3-wood. It's not about what you shot. You can actually go play some dope, interesting golf courses that we're not used to seeing that we could
It
not get a PGA Tour course or
it
PGA
does
Tour setup.
solve more match play does solve some of the length debate because length doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It's not that it doesn't matter. It just means that you're not trying to protect par anymore. You're just
yeah,
trying to create drama. And I think what they've been trying to do with the Tour Championship is create in the whole playoff system is create what you have in other sports, right? You have the ability for the 9-7 Giants to beat the 16-0 New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, right? Like the
hmm
Giants were not a better team throughout throughout the entirety of the season. They
yeah,
won one game, and that made them world champions.
yeah.
I
I mean,
think that
The Diamondbacks just beat the living shit out of the Dodgers. The Dodgers won 103 games.
I just think
Same division.
that's what they need to that's what they could create with a match play scenario where it's you put yourself in the position throughout the entirety of the year to earn your way into playing in this event. Everything from here is earned as well. It's we're starting from scratch. You put a peg in the ground and you got to go win 4 matches.
Yeah,
I
and
think
no
we
matter
can.
what, I mean, Andy from the Friday Night said this. Even if they don't end up doing match play, I think the big thing is getting away from like the way they have it is I understand wanting to benefit the the quote unquote leader, but every other match play is or every other playoff format is you re-rack them and kind of start over, right? Like
Yep.
again, the Braves just lost the Phillies. Like they didn't, and the Braves didn't start every game against the Phillies up 6-0. That would have been great. So we couldn't have any offense, but I don't know. They got to rethink it, but it would make all the sense in the world. It's like right, like and people would argue it's a bit different, but it's like for sure, it's like regular season, postseason, right? It's like we play stroke play in the regular season to figure out who the best is, and then we go have a true playoff where, like, yeah, no shit variance is going to happen. That's the whole point of the event, right? And
Yep.
I think for all of us sickos, like, we all watch, I mean, you and I, we were up in Seattle sitting there in your backyard watching the Tour Championship, and, like, it was fun to hang out with you, not the most compelling golf, but I think all of us would be like, can you imagine? I think we probably get, Tour Championship time, probably get a bunch of sickos together and play golf in the morning, and then like, God, we got to watch these matches, like must see TV in a way that like no other, like no PGA Tour event is must see TV.
Yeah.
Outside the majors, like I like watching the players, okay, but like it doesn't give you like feelings, right? We're like, why does Ryder Cup? Yes, it's the U.S. versus Europe, but it's more than that, right? It's really like the format is just something we never, ever, ever, ever get to see, unfortunately.
That's true. I think that maybe not to steal your thunder here, but there's a little bit of a natural segue in there with when you think
Steal it.
about match play opening up more golf courses for the professional golfer that quote unquote hits the ball too far. Um, I think that you can also look at the opportunity then to play other golf courses as an amateur golfer from different spots. I'm not advocating for I hope this isn't taken out of context, that everybody should show up at the longest golf course they can find and beg to play the furthest tee back possible. That is a nightmare for everybody. But I think, I don't know if anybody saw this, but the USGA put out a report this week that was essentially a play the right tees, so no longer a play it forward or a play it up type of initiative, because playing it too far forward can also create pace of play issues. If you're waiting for par 4 greens to clear, if you're waiting for par 5 greens to clear that you normally wouldn't get 2 and 2, you actually create a pace of play issue inadvertently by playing it too short for how far you hit the golf ball. I think that there's also this sense of watching guys on TV and with how far they hit it, hitting so many short irons into holes, that the thought for the average player is, I should go out and hit wedge into every par 4.
Yeah.
I just don't prefer that. When I get done with a golf course, and it's not always created by length. The recent pod with Hussey breaking par and talking about Peacock, right? Shorter golf course, but you hit a lot of different golf clubs or you can hit a lot of different golf clubs on that golf course. Soul Park, you can hit a lot of different golf clubs on that golf course. Not a long course from where we typically play it from, not a long course from all the way back, but you can hit a lot of different golf clubs on that golf course. One thing that length does is it brings in a part of the bag for everybody. Some people can control how far they play it. Some people like you that hit it really far and don't know that they hit it really far can play it a little further back, and it actually brings in more club usage where you actually get to play. You're given the opportunity to put 14 clubs in your bag. What's the point if you're not going to hit 14 golf clubs? So you get the opportunity to hit more variants of golf shots. And 2, I think part of what I wanted to see with you in a situation where everybody was going to agree to play it all the way back and you were going to be somewhat forced, right? You tell people a lot of the times, our first meeting at Monarch Bay, of me playing it at 7,000 yards and saying it doesn't play that long. Like, I truly believe that Monarch Bay does not play 7,000 yards. And you were playing it.
And for context, I think you're right. I just think, like, 99.9% of golfers meeting at public golf courses are fucking idiots. And I was like, I happen to meet the 0.01%. Right?
And you played it at that point, right? You were a guy that liked to play at 6,600 yards, and you played it 1 tee up, the 9 holes that we played. And
yeah,
it was just kind of
68 to me was like the biggest ballpark I would consider.
Yeah, it was, and I was perplexed watching you swing it. Like, you've plenty of pop to play it. Like, it's not like I'm playing a golf course that is extraordinary. 7,000 is just like this weird barrier in people's minds. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about it. We were playing with our buddy Rick out at Green Hills, shorter golf course. But I was thinking about it before we played and did just the kind of basic math on it, right? Where if you think the average par 3 is, call it 180 yards or so, mid-iron, 7-iron for a guy, or 6-iron for a guy like you, and your average par 5 is 550 or so gettable in 2 for a guy like you, right? Not easily gettable, but gettable in 2. That means your average par 4 is a shade under 400 yards to get to your 7,000 number if you're playing a par 72. So I really wanted to see, again, in an environment where everybody's going to agree to play it back, and you would have had to have been the lone kind of, I'm going to play it 1 tee forward, the lone abstainer from playing it all the way back. I wanted to essentially force you into it and see what you thought. And if we got done and you would have said, hey, that was like way too much ballpark for me, fine. I didn't think that was going to be the case. And what it ends up doing a lot of the times is it actually takes your landing zone for driver and it makes it play as the architect designed. If you play it far enough back, or if you play it at the right tees for you, would maybe be a more appropriate way of saying it. And the right tees for a guy that hits it 300 yards off the tee, at most golf courses, is all the way back, right? And you hit the golf ball 300 yards off the tee, playing it at 60, playing golf courses one up a lot of times makes you either throttle back off the tee or try to fit driver into a spot that driver's not meant to be fit.
Yeah.
That was my theory.
Yeah, and I guess for some additional color as well, I mean, one thing I've said on record many times, like almost every one of our, even our good friends, like I have a coach, shout out KP. I listen to him, and I'm not going to look at Instagram for stuff. Like, I just want to get my knowledge from someone I trust who knows me, who's, sort of like I'm like if I have a doctor, right? If I'm going to my doctor, I'm not going to go talk to the guy next door or WebMD, right? You're one of the few people who I actually like when you give me advice, I want to listen. And I think the big thing for me is what I actually realized about that weekend that I still feel a lot. I've not been able to play a ton of golf since then, but I think that weekend was big for me around self-belief and belief in what I've been working on. Meaning, as you now know, the way that I've, in combination of the work I've done with Kevin, and then also the way Chris has kind of helped me build my bag, my 3-wood is meant to turn over to the right for me. And my driver is now, for context, we might have mentioned this in the past, but I have a Stealth 2, 10.5 degree, and the face is 4 degrees open. So it's been sitting at 8.5. So that thing is supposed to be a cut machine, or the way Kevin put it is sometimes if it doesn't cut, he's like, even if you have your old kind of like, cause he's like, we've gotten these so shallow in a good way that he's like, sometimes like if you just hit a good drive, that's a little under the plane, 4 degrees open, it's just, instead of drawing, it's just going to kind of neutralize it a little bit and keep it a little more neutral for you. But as you kind of saw me that weekend, like I haven't hit a cut I learned how to play golf hitting a cut, but haven't hit a cut in a long time, haven't committed to a shot shape. And I think what that weekend did for me was realize that I just need to believe in myself and what I'm doing. Like it stands out to me, not even with driver. Number 10 at Trophy Lake, and again, we'll discuss this trip at length in the new year. But I remember it was like a 470-yard dog leg to the right. And there's a bunker on the left side, kind of right where you want to hit it, and there's shit right. And I remember that I pulled my driver out of my bag, and he looked at me and he said, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I was like, "It's 470 yards." And you go, "Nope, we're not doing that. Like that's not it." I'm like, but no. And then you got up there and you said, "Hit your hammer draw, like just nothing crazy. Don't swing harder. Just hit your draw 3-wood at the bunker." And I didn't hit it great, but I think I had like 7-iron in, like in my mind, like at 470, it's like, I got to just swing so hard at driver and I'm going to have like a hybrid in. And it was like, don't get me wrong, like the conditions, the fairways were firm and everything, but there was a lot of stuff where I kind of walked away from that weekend being like, okay, I've built off the tee. I've built a club to do kind of, I've got my 2 hybrid that goes straight, my 3-wood that goes draws, my driver that goes to the left. And I never, if we're playing this at 70 fucking 400 or 500 yards, there's never a situation where I should let the length of the hole, unless it's like a shorter hole and they're shit, I should never let the length of the hole actually dictate strategy. And that is a light bulb for me that never, ever, ever went off. So as I made a joke earlier, you could listen to this and be like, look at these 2 douchebags, JD's like cruising club head speed at his driver's like 125. Like he's hitting it farther than the guys on tour. And I, nothing crazy, but I'm like 14, so we both swing it hard. But I think the big thing though is not getting intimidated. And again, like not like from a core strategy perspective, if you've put in the work and if you've built something that is meant to answer a specific question, don't go away from that simply because, oh my God, it's this distance. Because for me, many of our listeners are they're not on the same page as this, but as I've talked about in the past, like my goal going into next year is to start to try to compete for some mid-am stuff. And Hussey and I are going to copy you and Greg and do some, 4-ball stuff. And what I already feel and I'm excited to go on is like I find myself at times getting nervous when I play with better players. And also, too, as someone hits it a long way, people hit it farther than me. I find myself getting intimidated. There's times where the golf course I can get intimidated. And what I've realized is if I'm going to be the golfer who I need to be and who I know I can be, I need to not get intimidated by people who hit it farther. I need to not be intimidated by the golf course because, man, if we hadn't had that, it was super fun. It wasn't an exercise, but if we haven't had that exercise of playing it back, I could see myself playing my first mid-am at 7,100 and being like, well, shit, it's a dog leg to the right, but I fucking hit driver and I make a 10 and I'm just like, I'm a mess. And now it's like, no, I know what I got to do. So I found that weekend very fun to hit all kinds of different shots, but also very, very, very instructive and helpful as well. So you nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things in there, right? Playing 10 again, if you were to go back and play it again, you probably hit driver knowing how much room there is up the right.
Probably,
Not knowing that, though, standing on that tee box, especially for a guy that is trying to work a new ball flight, not knowing how much room there was right to line up down the right-hand side and trust your cut,
can't do it.
You would have done one of two things. You would have hit a hammer pull, and it may still have been okay, but you wouldn't have gotten a lot of confidence out of it. Or you would have given up on one, and it still may have been okay, but you wouldn't have gotten a lot of confidence out of that either, just hitting a blitz to the left. That probably would have gone shorter than your 3-wood, even though you didn't really hit the kind of full hammer draw that you can with that 3-wood. It was more of a kind of a straighter ball. And I think your point is really well received in the sense that, like, listen, at Green Hills, I watched you hit that 3-wood 290. Does it go 290? I'm not 100% sure, but does it have 290 in it? I've seen it. If you hit that hammer draw on a downhill, slightly downwind hole with firm fairways, I've no doubt that sucker's getting out to 290, and at 450, 460, 470, that leaves you something like a 8, 7, 6 iron in, right? Depending on kind of line and angle and whatnot. That's certainly playable, and that's a hole that I think if you look at, even knowing it, that's a hole that if I were to give you a 4 or ask you to play it, you're going to take the 4 and go to 11 every single time. Like, it's not don't get me wrong, it's not like an impossible golf hole by any stretch of the imagination, but it's hard enough that you're happy with 4. So you're just trying to play on the margins. You're trying to play where you can feel like you can make a really confident golf swing at it. And sometimes that means hitting less than driver. I think more often than not, you still are going to try to push a ball down there. But it goes to show you that, and the second point to this is, even at 72, 73, 74, 7,500 yards, nobody hit driver off of every par 4.
No.
Right? The 6th hole at Trophy Lake, really good little dogleg left after the long par 3 and before your favorite par 5 7th hole. You hit driver because for you it set up really nicely for
I told you, I'm going to be most committed to hitting a cut there.
Aim at the right trees and let it slide. For me, who also likes to play a cut, is getting a little bit more comfortable playing a draw if I really hit a hard driver. It didn't seem like a good fit. And I want to say it was 400 yards, somewhere in that ball, like not super long, but somewhere in that ballpark. And I hit 2 iron.
I think I hit driver 56 or driver 58.
Yeah, and I hit 2 iron because I knew 2 iron would, I think the trees up the right lasered at like 280 or something, or 270. I knew 2 iron would stay short if I happened to put an uncommitted swing on it, which gave me some freedom to line up at the trees and actually put a committed swing on it. So it's this weird thing where I could have hit 3-wood or I could have hit driver, and it might have been a better play if I hit it well. Mm-hmm. But I would have been less likely to be committed to it. And this is a golf course that's long. So I think that you got a really good taste that the length of the golf course, the number on the scorecard shouldn't necessarily make or break your experience. That doesn't mean that golf for you from 6,200 yards at Peacock Gap is bad. It just means that when you go to Monarch or when you go to some other courses that are 7,000 yards or 7,200 yards, that you shouldn't automatically default to playing one or two up to get to a specific number with the length that you hit it. So again, emphasizing the fact that this isn't a encouragement for everybody to go play the back tees. It's go play the right tees and go try some different tees to find out what that is.
Yeah, I think the try is the big thing because it's something that like I never would have ever done that without you poking me along, and I think that was super helpful. Because the other thing too that I realized, and again, it's all these things that were unfounded, but we're just there. I think you even said, we're talking about driver and a lot of these holes, 8, 9, 8, 7, sometimes 6 iron, and I found that kind of made me feel like nervous, right? Where it's like, bud, if you're gonna play golf, like you gotta fucking hit a 7 iron, man. Like you gotta like lean into that as opposed to leaning out of it. And I thought that was helpful. And also too, candidly, I think that like it's interesting because obviously I wouldn't say that this is necessarily like golf per se, but I will say it was also, I don't know that I need to do it every single day, but there was something really that I found really helped me focus with my drive. Like what I've tried to do is take that focus from that drive around to everywhere because, for example, I played Metro on Saturday, and Metro is hard in a different way, but like you can kind of hit it anywhere off the tee at Metro. But like what was really helpful about our experience that day was like you knew that like everything you just said is true. But if you're suddenly hitting like 230 yard like slices, you're going to have like it's going to suck. Like it's not going to be fun if you're hitting like shots like kind of like really like weak slices or whatever. So it really kind of made me like, okay, like the way this hole is going to start is a really confident, committed drive to that location because the only way to play this golf course is to hit it 270, 280, 290 out there in play, or else you're going to shoot 110, right? But I found I was much more focused to a line. I thought more a lot about that. And I tried to take that because I'm definitely notorious for like, I just get up there and be like, where are you aimed? And it's like, like out there, like I'm not really aimed at anything,
Yeah, I mean,
driver, it's really helped me to like pick a spot and go with that spot.
It's a little different when you're playing a 380 yard golf hole hitting driver because it's wide open and you should hit driver. Who cares, right? Just you can hit it anywhere and you can hit it as shitty as you want. You're going to have a short club in your hand, right? It's a little different when you're playing a 480 yard par 4 or a 460 yard par 4, whatever the number is for anybody out there, where you do have to fit one in, or you do have to put a good swing on it to give yourself a chance at still making good scores. So yeah, it is good for focus, and I'm a little bummed you haven't played more golf since then because I actually think, although you did tell me that round at Metro you hit 15 out of 18 greens, so
yeah, totally.
That's
and hit my driver. It's the best. That was the best I've ever. I would go so far as say that was my best ball striking round I've ever had.
It's not hard to.
It's tee to green.
I don't think that's a stretch. 15 out of 18 greens in a windy place like that where you can get some funky bounces and it's easy to miss greens out there. Mm-hmm. That's a really good ball striking round for anyone, especially playing it all the way back. Wink, wink. But a little bummed that you haven't played more just from the sense that I think if you took that and immediately went back and played more of your standard golf course that you play a lot of in the Bay Area, which for anyone that doesn't play a ton of golf in the Bay Area, and it's the same thing where I'm at in Seattle, unless you make that trek down south, a lot of the golf courses kind of top out at 65, 6,600 yards. So even if you are playing...
Presidio's like six... I mean, granted, Presidio's foggy.
That's not a fair 6,500, yeah.
Yeah. But Presidio's like 64. But yeah, no, I hear you. Like, really, I think it's Rooster Run, it's Metro, it's Monarch. And again, for Metro and Monarch, to your point, when the wind's blowing on certain holes, it's not that way. But in some holes it is, right? Like
What's Metro from all the way back?
7-ish.
Yeah.
I mean, it from a rating perspective, it's like it's hard.
Metro's a good track.
I mean,
it's probably my favorite kind of Bay Area
it's my favorite
muni.
too.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But love the airplanes. $69 to walk on the weekends. It's been a tough. Greens are always good. It's been a tough scene a little bit on pace of play recently, like five and a half hour rounds out there. But you get shitty golfers who are playing the wrong tees in the wind. Like, welcome to fucking Bone Zone. Like,
yep.
I mean, yeah, just crazy. But yeah, so again, we joke it's the hashtag play it back, but I think it's more of the light bulb went off for me, and I just think that, to your point, it's like just try more tees and don't be intimidated about playing it back. You know,
yeah.
Like, for example, like, some people are gonna fight. This is gonna piss people off, but like, it was hard enough. But like, I am curious when we go back to Bandon in 2025, like, to go back to you said you've done that. Like, it feels like a different golf course. Like, I'd be very curious to know what Bandon's like when it's not at, I mean, I know there's a lot of wind, but like, Bandon's like, the green tees are like 62, something like that. Like, I don't know.
I would, even if it's just one group, like, pick a group that's willing to get together and say, one of the two groups is would more prefer to play it back than up. And maybe it's a golf course by golf course thing, but yeah, I mean, there's little changes here and there. I think you're actually going to be shocked at some of those courses how much it doesn't actually change it. You may hit what'd you hit off of one at Bandon?
Two hybrid pitching wedge.
So if you take that 60 yards back, you hit driver and you have the same club into the green.
Huh.
So it changes your tee selection, but it doesn't change the way the rest of the hole plays. It maybe gives you more options off the tee because you still could hit a 3-wood or a 2 hybrid and have longer clubs in. But
well, in some ways, this might be a hipster idea, but in some ways, it might even make it a little easier. Because a good example is like number 4 at Bandon, the dog leg to the right. I remember the first time I played there, the caddy kind of told me not to, but I was like, nah, I'm just gonna hit driver. I hit driver like over the dune, like I hit it straight, and to hit driver, you kind of have to take the corner. Where I imagine if you play it back, you can kind of just hit driver at the edge, and you're going to be fine.
That's what I mean about more how the designer
out of your hand.
The designer meant the golf course to be played, right? I'm not saying that they said you have to hit driver to the corner. Maybe it's a 3-wood and not a driver, but that hole wasn't designed for you to take it over the corner like you would playing it up.
Yeah.
That's more what I mean.
Totally, you hit it and totally guess. Like, you and your cat are going to be digging around because you have no fucking idea where it is over on the right because you're carrying everything.
I've said that. I'm sure you've heard me say that. I don't think, and again, I'll use the term playing the right tees. I don't think playing the right tees, which for you a lot of times is playing it back, I don't think that makes golf courses harder, and I do think in certain times, certain cases, it makes golf courses easier. We played out at Berkeley Country Club. The third hole out there is a sharp dogleg right. It has out of bounds on both sides, and there's a tree that overhangs. My 3-wood's the same way. My 3-wood's the same way as yours. It tends to turn over a little bit more, but you have to hit a cut there. The problem is it's a longer hole no matter what tee you play, and the back tees and the 1-ups are only 12, 13 yards difference, whatever that number is.
Yeah, not much.
But for me, from the back tee, if I hit a driver, I can essentially hit it dead straight at a line, and if I don't move it right, I'll probably get a kick right and I'm okay. If you move forward 13 yards, I fly it out of bounds. So that hole actually becomes harder if I move up, because it takes my cut club essentially out of my hands.
Yeah. So again, moral of the story, just especially if you're a member of a private club, which again, we are not. You just try different tees. I think people just get so used to going to their usual track and just sticking the peg in the same place every time and just go mix it up.
Play different tees on different holes. You don't have to play the same tee markers all the way through.
Yeah.
Make your own combos.
Yeah, your score doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to post everything.
Yeah. Well, I'm proud of you for giving it a shot, and I'm really glad that you enjoyed it as much as I thought you would. I'm looking forward to playing more golf with you from longer distances and seeing what it does for your game. I think it'll be really good.
Middle of November, Poppy Hills. I know you said maybe you were joking on the podcast we did recently that'll come out later. Maybe Poppy not from the back, but I think we played Poppy from the back. And we told the marshal to eat it.
We'll play Poppy back, and it'll be a lot of fun. And if you and Hussey are going to get into the 4-ball, and Greg and I are coming down to play in the 4-ball, maybe we do a little 4-ball match play, a little Ryder Cup style match play. Why not?
It could be a shame if we didn't. Yeah, and then we get to have you and Greg on to talk about how you guys qualified for the 4-ball match play. So
we're speaking it into
existence. Putting that out into the universe.
There you go.
Yes, sir. Well, have a great night, man. This was great, and I know we'll do it again soon.
It was good to see you.
Peace.